Taiwan's defense ministry says it's monitoring a U.S. warship that transited the Taiwan Strait on Tuesday. The USS John Vance sailed northwards toward Japan in what the U.S. Navy says is a routine freedom of navigation exercise. Transits by warships from the U.S. and its allies through the Taiwan Strait often anger Beijing, which views both the waters and Taiwan as part of its own territory. It's the second time a U.S. warship has transited the Taiwan Strait this year. This recent Taiwan Strait transit comes just a day after China announced it will increase military spending by 7%. But are the two events linked? To find out, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Brian Hart, a security analyst with the China Power Project at CSIS in Washington, D.C.
Brian, I want to first ask you about this transit in the Taiwan Strait by the U.S. Is this transit timed in any way with the two sessions meeting that's happening right now in Beijing?
Yeah, so I think broadly this transit, these are the U.S. Navy describes these as routine. I believe this is the second one that's happened this year. And, generally sometimes these are in response to specific things. I think right now it's probably not a response to anything that's going on in Beijing with the two sessions. I think it's in response to China's assertiveness around Jaime in recent weeks in response, their Coast Guard sailing in waters around Jaime after the death of two Chinese fishermen. So I think that's largely in response to this.
At this summit, this two-session summit, China announced it's going to be increasing defense spending by 7%. Is that a lot? And what does that mean for Taiwan's military?
The figure that they put out was 7.2% growth, and that's pretty much exactly in line with what we saw last year as the official growth rate, and pretty much in line with what we've seen in the last several years of growth rates around the high single figures. And so I think, for me, this just shows continued steady investment in the PLA, which is significant, I think, given some of the economic constraints China's on in terms of, slowing GDP, but also, sluggish housing market and all the various other structural factors China's facing. So I think it shows that there's continued prioritization of the PLA with Xi Jinping caring about military modernization. I expect we'll continue to see that. One of the signs I look for is, if China faces a really prolonged and sharp economic slowdown, more severe than what we're seeing now, you may see more of that kind of guns versus butter debate in terms of how they invest. We're not seeing that yet. We're seeing them continue to, prioritize pretty steady investment.
Given this increase in defense spending from China, what does this mean for Taiwan and the other countries in the Indo-Pacific region?
This is just another year of continuing shifts in the balance of power. China now outspends Taiwan and all of its other neighbors by a huge margin. Last we looked, the best, I think, kind of figure we have is that China spends more than the next 17 countries in the region combined. Still less than the United States, but significantly more than all of its neighbors. And so I think that's a worrying sign for Taiwan, but also for Japan and Korea and India, countries that have tense relations with Beijing. And we do see these countries starting to invest more in their own defense and to start investing in some of their alliances with the United States and other partners in the region in response to Beijing's growing power.